Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Bolt Breakdowns here on the Guilty as Charged podcast YouTube channel. My name is Alex, as always, wishing I was coming to you under better circumstances, but unfortunately, the Chargers drop a stinker to the Washington Commanders. A game in which they were up 10-0 and were driving, streaking down the field to potentially take a 3-possession lead, and then a QJ fumble, and the rest was history. The Commanders then scored 27 points unanswered. And I think for me, the thing that stands out, we can talk about specific offensive, defensive, special teams problems, and we'll get into all of it. But it's just how undisciplined they look. They take 14 penalties against the Giants. They took 10 today against the Commanders. And it's just unsustainable to have the amount of injuries that they have and have all that they're going through on the offensive side of the ball while also beating yourself up with these penalties, right? And you saw that at specific moments in this game today, right? Those two Herbert throws back-to-back to QJ and Keenan Allen for what looked like explosive plays get called back because of a Pipkins holding and then a Pipkins illegal formation on the next play. Obviously, there was a very important 4th and 2 in which Tyler Conklin sort of entered the play late after Herbert had already, was like halfway through calling the play. He runs out on the field. Keenan Allen is jumping up and down, like hands in the air because they had 10 guys on the field. And Conklin comes into the play too late. Barely turns around, it goes through his hands, hits him in the helmet, ball drops to the ground. Incomplete. And then, of course, on special teams, right, you have the Lad McConkey run back that is called back because Marla Wax ran right into the punter. And it wasn't even, close. You couldn't even debate it. It was very clear on the TV angle. Before McConkey even touched the ball, which is why, for as awesome of a kick return highlight as it was, it ultimately wasn't going to matter because of what everyone saw Wax do in that moment. So here's the thing. It's one thing if I get on here and it's just like, hey, man, they had a 30-27 loss to the Commanders and they came up short, back next week. It's another thing when I am on here and we're talking about the same stuff that we really were talking about last week in the Giants game. And I just pointed out to you about, 5 penalties / situational football moments that costed the Chargers today. And that's ultimately kind of how I feel about how this team is playing right now. And if you go back to how they were playing in the first 3 weeks, 2.5, it just doesn't make sense, right? From a defensive fundamentals perspective, from an offensive fundamentals perspective, special teams, wherever you want to approach it, they were playing a much more clean brand of football than they are now. And for a Jim Harbaugh team that, again, prides itself on doing the right thing, being in the right spot at the right time. This has been quite the self-destruction of the last 2 weeks. And there were Giants fans who got mad at me last week when I said the Chargers beat themselves. And I gave credit to the Giants. They deserve their credit for the win, despite losing to the Saints today. But what I meant when I said that was not to take away credit from Jaden Daniels or the Commanders running backs and their offensive line and how they played today. But if the Chargers show up like this, they're just DOA. And it kind of doesn't matter. And I feel bad for the fans that were at the game. I know a couple people who were like, this was my first Chargers game and I wanted to go to SoFi. And for as much as the Chargers and Chargers fans lament the fan attendance problem at games, stuff like this kind of keeps happening. I know they got the big Broncos win, obviously a couple weeks ago, but going back to the Tampa beatdown from last year, there was the this game is really their second home game of the year, and they get kind of punched in the mouth by the Commanders. For as much as obviously the fan attendance and stuff could be better at games, right? Like I felt this way really since they moved to LA in 2017, which is if you're not going to put that consistent product on the field in which the same team shows up every game, regardless of what they win or lose. I mean, obviously, yes, winning would lead to more people going to games, and winning consistently would do that. But to me, it's more of an issue of it's just going to be hard to get people to buy in when every time it looks like the Chargers are about to turn the page, are about to turn a leaf, stuff like this happens. Now this is really the first time they've lost 2 games in a row in the Harbaugh era. They did technically lose 2 last year, back-to-back with the Steelers and the Chiefs games, I want to say back-to-back in week 3 and week 4. However, I give them more of a break on that one because, obviously Herbert was dealing with the ankle thing, and Chase Daniel got into the Steelers game, not Chase Daniel, Taylor Heineke, my bad, got into the Steelers game. And, that one was one that was DOA once the Steelers defense got its head around and they were starting. I guess in a way kind of similar to this game, Jamari Salyer and Pipkins out there at left and right tackle last year against the Chiefs in week 4 in a somewhat similar scenario, game at home. But last year's team was just so much more disciplined when it came to all of these phases of the game, right? Regardless of what team they were going against. That's not to say they didn't have their, bad games, of course. I just talked about the Bucs one from last year, and you can point to your fair share of bad games, bad losses for sure. But I guess when I think about last year's team, I never thought about the term quit. And today I thought about the term quit. I think the Commanders get a 99-yard drive after the Chargers throw the red zone interception on the ball that got tipped from Herbert in the back of the end zone by Jerjon Newton. 99 yards, no resistance, like really at all. And that was kind of emblematic to me. I guess we can start with the defense if we want to. I don't know what's happened to Jesse Mitter's unit. It looks very undisciplined. We've already used that term in regards to the penalties, but the sloppy tackling really stands out to me here. And it felt like every time the Commanders got a big, explosive run play or something that wasn't, throw downfield, it was a result of the Chargers just not being in the right spot, to make the tackle, or not being, using proper technique to make the tackle, or the Commanders just going, you know what, we have seen the film of your edge right now against the run, and we are going to test it. And that is exactly what happened in this game. There's a sequence, I want to say, in like the third quarter where they had that big Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt run where it's like Dye and Derwin, should have had him on the ground. He, reverses out of that and picks up probably like 20, 30 more yards, gets down to the 30-yard line of the Chargers. And it's just like, that's a big moment where it's like game over. Right after that play, I think it's literally like the next play or the second to next play after that, they throw a swing to Jeremy McNichols that's like 4 yards in the backfield, and Tarheeb misses a tackle, and Cam Hart gets run over, and McNichols just converted, a 3rd and 10, a 3rd and 10 swing pass for a first down on the same drive, and it's really perplexing stuff, and a lot of it is I don't want to use the term effort problem, but like kind of an effort problem right now, right? When you're not executing on defense the way they are. And look, yes, if we talk about injuries, and we're certainly going to talk about injuries on the offensive side of the ball, this is a team that misses Khalil Mack. And they really cannot set an edge without him, and that's been apparent on tape for a couple games now. Thule is doing, the best he can from a pass rush perspective, but Thule got blown up a couple times. I would say in the run game today, whenever the Commanders went to the left side, which he was standing on, right? In previous games, it was Caleb Murphy or Bud Dupree who were in similar scenarios, but today it was anyone who could get it on that left side, and the Commanders just realized, like, I almost liken it to those games where you just are the button mashers, right, as they call them, the video games you're playing as a kid, where you just like there's a quick cut or like a quick scene animation where you just have to hold down the button the same all the time for the same thing to happen, or you have to hold it a bunch of times in a row because it's like it's like a quick time event or a quick fight, and that's what it felt like Kingsbury was doing to Minter today. Really, every play of this game, they just had the Chargers defense's number. I barely want to look at like what the success rate and stats like that today on the defense were, but a stat just got sent to our chat. 57% success rate for the Commanders today on offense versus 38% for the Chargers, meaning just how successful were you at setting up every play and executing it. And it looked like that today. I wanted to write off last week, particularly for the defense and like some of the wide open lanes they gave up to Scattaboo, or to Jackson Dart, I should say. And some of the times that Scattaboo bowled them over, and it's like, West Coast to East Coast road trip. You could make some excuses for that game and how it went in particular, but it wasn't a one-off thing, right? I think that was the biggest thing that we learned today. It was really this defense for, in my opinion, the last 10 quarters dating back to the end of the Broncos game. Really, when they had that explosive beginning of the third quarter where J.K. Dobbins got him a couple times running to the edge. He gets that touchdown where Dayon misses a tackle, and like a lot of those defensive tendencies that we saw in the second half of that game have now carried over to now. And so I am really just kind of at a loss for why this stuff keeps happening. Now, a lot of this, again, like I said, they miss Mac. It's a tone setter issue on defense. I think Minter, has obviously not had them coached well to play, but it's going to be hard to win games where Derwin and Dayon don't play particularly well. And that's, we saw that in the first 2.5, 3 games of the season. It felt like in that regard, they could not be, stopped. But whenever that trio of Derwin, Dayon, and Minter are all kind of interlocking and playing well, things go well. And when there's missed tackles, blown coverages, or that kind of stuff going on, and you have Derwin and Dayon not playing particularly at the level that we know they're capable of playing at, then you kind of get what I would call the snowball game today on defense. And I talked about the 99-yard drive that ends in the Deebo Samuel touchdown already, and touched on that, but where's the pride? I guess is the one question that I have, because man, I know it's 2010. There's 6-7 minutes left. The game was over anyway. I mean, I certainly stopped being quite as emotionally invested by that point when it became clear the Commanders were going to win. But not an acceptable effort, I would say, in pass defense, run defense, to allow that kind of drive. And it showed a difference in the lack of urgency, I think, from these teams offensively and defensively, right? Like the Commanders kind of, despite being up 2 possessions, still were kind of going for the kill. And it felt like the Chargers just couldn't care less on that drive, which is kind of unfortunate. And, look, they are beaten, they're battered, they're bruised right now from all the injuries that we keep talking about. But I just felt that was a kind of unacceptable level of play today. The Commanders only went to third down 7 times today. I believe that's by far the lowest of any team against the Chargers this season. They had, 22 first downs, 9 passing first downs, and 9 rushing first downs. 4 first downs from penalties. Great. And then they only got put into third down situations 7 times. By contrast, the Chargers got put into third down 16 times on their own offense. So I could go through the list and talk about specific players and like the day that they had, but I also think you guys watched the game too. Dayon did not play well. Derwin did not play well. Tarheeb, I thought, had a pretty good first half, but then fell off pretty precipitously in the second half. Derwin did not play well. And it kind of stinks because they're like some of the only playmakers it feels like you have on that defense. Alohi did not play particularly well, although not maybe as much of an issue down like run defense as he has been in the previous games. St. Just got punched in the mouth a couple times by his own team. Man, you could just go down the list. Cleveland Farrell shout out to him for like coming out and playing, I guess. But again, from a talent perspective, they lose Deshaun Hand in this game too. They look hopeless out there from a talent standpoint, matching up with these offenses week to week, and just from a discipline standpoint, when you're beating yourself with all of these penalties that prevent your ability to certainly get off the field. Special teams did their best to help in that regard as well, which I'll get to in a minute. I thought it was a really soulless performance on defense today, and I would hope against Miami they show up and have some pride in that one, because that was a really disappointing effort. Again, Commanders run stats, they were the number 2 team in EPA coming into this game. I think they'll leave this game in the same place. Ja'Cory Cross-Kamara had 14 rushes for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, 8 for 39. He didn't go over the 41-yard mark that I had as an average for the game. So, that's great. But yeah, anytime JCM or touched the ball, or anytime they had one of their pass catchers catch the ball in space, the Chargers really couldn't do anything about it. And that to me is the story of this game. And in addition, they couldn't really get much pressure going on Jaden Daniels after the first 2 or 3 drives for the Commanders, and everything was straight downhill after that. You got 1 sack really on a quarterback who's fully wearing a knee brace. This defensive line was not up to snuff today either. Special teams. Let's move on. 3 penalties today. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, they were the only team in the league that did not commit a penalty in those first 3 games. Now, I'm not saying everything was perfect on special teams in the first 3 games. Certainly there were times against Denver where they gave up some field position. We could talk about like J.K. Scott shank punts and stuff like that. But the way that they have been playing over the last 2 weeks, really abominably bad. I don't even know if they've had 3 special teams penalties in a fickin' game dating back 4 or 5 years now. I would have to go back and obviously look and see. But the Marla Wax thing was obviously pretty huge, for a guy that, we liked how he played in the preseason. And, that play is not an easy play to make, I think, to hesitate and stop that close, but still, you got to be more disciplined than that. And it ultimately costed them a really cool punt return that lad obviously got, and that was all she kind of wrote. They're at that point, that's an opportunity to go up 17-7. And certainly I think you're talking about the second half in a much different way than we are talking about today. Instead, they go into halftime. I believe it was 10-10. It should have been 10-10 going into halftime, I believe, yeah. And so that is an opportunity to get off the field again, and the Chargers, again, cost themselves. 2 other penalties on special teams today. The KLS experiment, the kick returning has been a complete non-factor for them. I give them some sympathy because of the Darius Davis injury, of course, but this special teams has not been locked in, and this defense has not been locked in. This offense has not been locked in. We can go in through all these things, but when they're going through the amount of attrition that they are on offense right now, and we'll get to that in a second. I can't believe it's been 21 minutes and I'm ranting about other shit. But when they're going through the amount of injuries that they are on offense right now, you can't afford to have this bad of a special teams. And they've been playing like a bottom 5 team from the special teams aspect, whether it's field position, whether it's returning, whether it's punt kick coverage, and the Commanders getting better starting field positions. This was something that particularly afflicted them against the Broncos and the Giants. I for a long time have given Ficken protected status because he's done everything, in my opinion, like really well with this defense, and they have played to that level, or with special teams, and they have played to that level to the point where there's still some positive stuff like Cameron Dicker, like I don't question their ability to kick field goals anymore and all that kind of stuff. But when you're making the sheer amount of mistakes that they're making in the special teams phase of the game today, he's going to get some questions. Just like we talked about Jesse Minter's defense, and they're kind of soul searching right now on that side of the ball. Let's get to the offense. The Chargers come away with 10 points. Had a chance again to go up 10-0. They falter, don't get it. QJ fumble, and the rest was kind of history in this game, like I said before. Penalties and just self-inflicted wounds really costing the Chargers in this one. They had 2 turnovers, including that QJ fumble and including the tipped red zone interception. But even before that, moments where, I mentioned the Tyler Conklin 4th and 2 play already. You had they get down to the 1 yard line on that drive where somehow, you had 5 or 6 Haskins plays in a row. It's like, oh, fuck, Hampton's hurt. So that's going to be a storyline going forward. But then they get down to the 1, and, obviously what happened there happened. I really didn't understand their lack of execution in that scenario too. I mean, obviously, yes, Hampton was out, but why not? I guess you don't trust the offensive line, but why not try to push it in? They've executed that before. Instead, they let Herbert, throw it from that distance, and gets tipped and picked. This offense continuously dug itself out of some situations, but then it was, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and there's no other drive that was more emblematic of that than Herbert, hitting a dart to Quentin Johnston, like I mentioned before, Trey Pipkins holding a hole shot to Keenan Allen, illegal formation, and Burkhardt said it on the broadcast. Burkhardt and Brady were talking about the amount of times Hampton got hit in the backfield, and Tom Brady replied yeah, that's an offensive line stat. And then Burkhardt mentioned they're playing musical chairs on the offensive line right now. These are things that were said in the broadcast, and can't disagree with them to any bit. Bradley Bozeman played like ass today. He was terrible. Trey Pipkins was terrible, although he was dealing with the knee injury and coming in and coming out of the game. just tired. I don't have that much energy left to like deal with the excuses at this point. And then it's just like every Chargers game has felt, particularly along the offensive line the last few weeks, has felt like I'm just going to check my phone and something bad's going to happen because I have notifications set up from Daniel Popper, and Popper tweets out, "Hey, Jimmy McFartsticks is in at right guard now, and Mekhi Becton's out of the game." And I just like look at my phone and I'm like, "Oh, cool. They're a good 20 seconds ahead in the stadium." And then they go into commercial break, and it's just like, yeah, the viewer at home, like the Times 2006 Person of the Year, you're actually in at left tackle right now. Go out there at left tackle and protect Herbert. So it's just like it's excruciating to watch the amount of offensive line injuries they had, and still, even with the amount of offensive line injuries they had, they still put themselves in positions to make plays, pick up yards, and didn't execute because of penalties, not being able to protect Herbert, all these kinds of things. This was a game that was still, a one possession game in third quarter, early fourth quarter. And, the fact that they were not able to take advantage is obviously, yes, they are set back on the offensive line, but the discipline issues on offense in particular, like we just talked about with defense and special teams, that Conklin play where he doesn't come on the field, they don't call timeout because they don't want to burden a timeout. I don't want to blame exclusively coaching for that. I'm sure they told Tyler Conklin to be in the right place at the right time. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, I'm sure they didn't tell him, hey, line up on the field late. But, how disorganized they look play to play where it's like, hey, can you have like 10, 11, 12 guys on the field? How many do we have right now? Oh, like that kind of stuff from down to down. Like I do think it's just a disorganized, like coaching game plan, situational football execution problem. Right. And just going through the stats right now, Herbert was 22 for 29, 166 yards. He played fine today. Touchdown, interception, 4 sacks. Trey Lance, of course, got into the game as it turned into a blowout late. Herbert, 4 carries for 60 yards. Hampton, 12 carries for 44 before he got injured. Vidal, 4 carries for 18 yards, 4.5 yards per carry. Apology forms on my desk, by the way. Haskins, 5 for 13. Quentin Johnson, 1 for 9. Rushing. Receiving, 5 for 58. Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson for 40, and the fumble. Lyle McConkey got a touchdown today. Conklin, the rest is, bleh. I don't know, man. I want to have faith that they should beat the Dolphins, but like their offense from an offensive line perspective is playing at such a talent disadvantage right now. And, it doesn't help that the people who are the established starters, right? Like Bradley Bozeman had a pretty public, miscommunication today with Herbert where they both disagreed on a protection, and you could hear it on the broadcast. Herbert tried to kind of ice it after the game and be like, oh, no, we're good. But, clearly the people like Bozeman and Zion, who are the only healthy people on the line right now, like if they're not communicating, with Herbert, then who is, right? Like it's not going to be Foster Sarell or Jamari Sallier or Deculus, who, was thrown into this game, right? And just the amount of, again, like Burkhardt said, musical chairs that they're going through right now. Like you can't afford someone like Bozeman to be as bad as he's playing while all this is happening, right, around him. And so I don't even want to go into the center. Oh, they didn't do enough in the offensive line in the offseason kind of rant and do the same conversation that I've had 500 times, that Steven and Tyler have talked about 500 times. Maybe I'll edit this in and like pull up a clip from like June or July when we were talking about this, or April when we were talking about this, or March when we were talking about this, or February. Like, yeah, I can probably find any clip from any of those months and talk about what we thought the team needed to do in that regard. Which is why, again, I go back to, and I think Popper summed up this point on his clip he posted from his April podcast perfectly, where he said, yeah, like and he captioned it like, you can't protect against Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt injuries, but what you could have protected against is how the interior looks right now. And the Chargers, at the end of the day, invested really their whole hopes and whole offseason on two things: second-year Joe Alt leap and Mekhi Becton, right? And Becton obviously comes in and out of the game dealing with a hand issue, apparently a ligament thing he dealt with in Philadelphia and played through, so he might have to play with a club on his hand, which, great, I'm sure that will go swimmingly. And, aside from that, again, just continuing the whole musical chairs bit of this, he has the concussion, comes back, the sickness in Brazil, played that game, but had to be, kind of on a, snap count in that game. And so, for as much as this team did take a step forward last year, they're really going to be ceiling limited by what they didn't do along the offensive line this year. And they really sunk all of their hopes into Becton when they got beat 4 other centers in free agency and haven't taken really an interior offensive lineman in the draft. And they're going to live and die by that decision this year. And right now it's looking more like dying than living. But, is there a path to this offensive line playing better once Alt gets back? Yes. What's my level of faith in that happening? I don't really know at this point. Yeah, that's about it for me today. There's probably things I could go into longer, but that was one of the more frustrating losses I've seen in a long time. The coaching staff looked horrible. The players' execution looked horrible. And I want to kind of focus in on like, this is what they're going to do better next game. Or, hey, you get a bounce back game against the Dolphins. But, we just saw this team drop a game to the Giants when, they were far from their best, and the Giants turned around and lost to the Saints today. Some of that is how that happens in the NFL, but other parts of that are, this team is just not playing nearly as disciplined and nearly at the level that you need to from week to week. And, not saying they're going to lose next week, but sitting here on Monday morning, I don't know how I could pick them to beat the Dolphins right now with the performances they've put up in back-to-back weeks. And the Dolphins lost to the Panthers yesterday. So I should in theory be able to go, hey, like, get them next week, but I can't. And like, they have, we've talked about this stretch for a while. It's like, they got the Dolphins coming up, they got the Titans coming up, solidify the AFC West on some of these wins, which miraculously, with the tiebreakers, they're still somehow in first place. But I can't look at any game on the schedule right now with how injured the offensive line is, how poorly they're being coached right now, and just the lack of talent they have from roster from a roster standpoint, position unit to position unit. I think you can take the worst team in the league and take the Titans, right? And it's like, they were competitive and beat the Cardinals yesterday, right? The Dolphins still have Tua and Waddle who can create some explosives, and Achane who can create some explosives against the defense that, has been giving up a lot of explosive plays. So I wish I had I wish I had more positive thoughts. I wish I had more things to compliment the team on, or again, they could be there next week. But at the end of the day, I don't. And I will say one positive thing, just because I've been talking shit for 35 minutes. Shout out to Keenan Allen, who today passed Marvin Harrison to become the fastest receiver to 1,000 yards. To 1,000 receptions in NFL history. And shout out to him for that. And I wish we could treat this podcast as a celebration of everything he's done as a Charger and, everything he's going to continue to do for the rest of the year. But instead, we're here talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same team. And I wish I had more optimism going forward. But right now, I think the story about the Chargers is they are a poorly coached group right now with players who are poorly executing. And at the end of the day, you can't pick that to beat any team in the NFL. So hopefully they take this week and they bounce back against the Dolphins team, who they should beat on paper. Not sure that is going to happen. But very frustrating loss. Thank you for tuning in if you did tune in. If you didn't tune in, I get it. But yeah, that'll do it for me today. Bolt up. See you guys next week, hopefully under better circumstances.